Clifton, what's going on, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. Great topic, financial literacy, especially for our kids. I know today we're going to be addressing a few different things. One being, as parents, how we can teach financial literacy, right, to our kids, but also how that elevates things, elevates the relationship. A project that you did with your son, which I think is fascinating. I really, even selfishly, want to hear more about that. And then things that will happen if we don't learn these lessons early on. But you said when you and I were jamming before we hit record and we hit on that last one, the things that could happen to us financially if we're not taught financial literacy growing up, you said, "Oh, that's my story." And I didn't ask you any more about it because I wanted you to tell it firsthand here. So what is the story around that?
Sure. So that's kind of the reason I do what I do. When I was younger, I was actually very lucky. I had two parents who were happy to talk to me about money. So, I'd ask them about how much money they make. They'd show me a pay stub, like that type of engagement, which I don't think a lot of parents even now do. So I was very fortunate that I had that growing up. But the conversations always revolved around, get that, go to school, get that job, earn your money, save some money. That's kind of where the conversation stopped. So when I went off to college, I got those first credit cards. I didn't know what I was doing. I
Like
didn't know
what?
how to manage that credit card debt at all. And, I started off pretty good. I said, credit cards are for emergency. And even that thinking is flawed. And we can get into that more. But I said credit cards are going to be used for emergency. And then quickly, an emergency was any time I wanted to go out on the town and have a good time with my friends. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to manage it. So I left college with tons of credit card debt. Had some student debt too. That was more manageable, but the credit card debt was what was crushing me, was just weighing down on me. And I didn't pay it. They got sent to collections. I was saying one of my first jobs out of college was I was a computer support person via phones. So basically you call me and I
Yeah.
help you fix your computer. The collection agency got a hold of me via the job. You can't dodge a collection agent when they're calling you and your job is to answer phones. And they would threaten me. They were like, I'm going to tell your employer that you're a deadbeat. That was terrible. So my
Are you
early
serious?
20s, oh, I'm serious, man. My early 20s was me dealing with debt collectors, taking jobs I didn't want, but I felt this pressure to start working so I could pay off these debts. And then just trying to figure out how this whole thing happened to me. It felt like it happened to me. I didn't feel like I had any control over it. Truly, it was my decisions, it was my choices that put me in those predicaments. But to answer your question, what happens when we don't teach our kids about financial literacy? Well, this is a story of one, but this is a story that I think highlights what can happen when we don't give our kids the full picture of what you need to do to manage your money.
I can't wait to see where we're going to go with this. I definitely understand what you're talking about. I went to college and I remember, man, it was almost like the lion in like the that was on the prowl, right? You couldn't see them,
Mm-hmm.
but you knew they were out there, they're watching, right? I remember going to the cafeteria. It was at least every week. They'd have the table set up and they're like, well, if you fill out an application, we'll give you a free frisbee. And you're like, oh,
Frisbee. I knew you were going to say
yeah,
frisbee. Frisbee and a
right.
t-shirt.
Or the t-shirt that was like three sizes too big, and you're like, yeah, I need another one. And I remember literally saying the exact same thing. I was like, well, if I get a credit card, then I'll use it in case of emergencies. And suddenly the case of beer that I needed for the weekend became the emergency. Well, I can't show up with it without anything. Like that's an emergency, right?
Exactly.
And but tell me, how far in credit card debt were you when you
Well,
graduated?
you know what? The thing is, it's all relative. The number amount, like, it doesn't really matter how much the number is. When you don't feel like you can pay it, when you stop paying it and it gets sent to collections, when it totally destroys your credit score and your credit history, it could be $5. Mine was thousands of dollars, but the number amount is less important than what it actually does to you. It
It's very
totally
true.
destroyed my confidence. It put me into a state of being anxious and depressed. And again, the number itself, it's relevant when you think about it. So anyone who's listening, if they have, $5 in debt and they don't feel like they can pay it, or they have $5,000 in debt or $500,000 in debt, the feeling's the same, right? When you don't know how to manage your money, it really can start to eat away at your mental health, which is one of the reasons why I feel it's so critical that we teach this to our kids, because we want to set them up for success and we don't want them, you know, making a mess of, like, one of the biggest things I had a hard time with is after I finished, college, and I was, about to set off on this grand journey of my career and all the rest. I didn't feel like I had a lot of choices. I didn't feel like I had a lot of options, because in my mind, I just had to start working. I had to take the first job I can get, because I needed to get this weight off of my back. So I took the first job I can get, which was a job I had when I was in high school. So I went through 4 years of college, got a degree, and I was doing a job that I could have done when I was in high school. So it didn't feel like I was moving forward. In fact, I was feeling like I was moving backwards, because now I have this degree, great, but I've got student loan, that stinks. And now I've got this credit card debt that I have to pay off, and I'm doing a job that I could have done before I even went off to college. So it's the number is a smaller factor. It's really, how does it make you feel, and what does it do to your career? What does it do to your opportunities? What does it do to your mental state? That's where you really need to think about what, getting into bad debt. And I'm definitely not saying all debt is bad debt, but some debt is definitely bad debt. And we need to be able to manage that. And we definitely need to start giving our kids a heads up on what to do and how to manage and what to be aware of, so that they avoid some of those mistakes that I made.
It's crazy to think that these these debt collectors were threatening you. I've luckily I've only had one experience with a debt collector, and it was it was in my first year of graduating college, and I graduated with this was before like you could like track everything on the internet and all that other stuff. I mean, I graduated college in 99, and everything was like pretty much written out, on paper and stuff like that. And to be honest, I put myself through school. I did pay all my credit cards on time. I didn't graduate with credit card debt. I actually managed money pretty darn well in college. And it was only because like I had to, like I was the only one making it. So I couldn't be stupid with it. And but I had four different college loans. And it's like when you're young and you're an idiot compared to what you are now, right? And I just was like, I was getting bills in the mail from my college loans, and one came from this, one came from that, and I was paying them all on time. And I'll never forget, I applied for a loan or something like that, and my credit was terrible. And I was like, and this was before they had like ID Shield and LifeLock and all these alerts, and I'm like, wait, like what are you talking about? My credit's always been good. I've paid every bill on time, even in college. And they're like, no, there's actually a organization here that says you haven't paid them in 10 months. It's like, what are you talking about? And then but I still like, it didn't register. And then it was like literally like it was, I don't know if it just hit my radar or if debt collectors, once they see you do an inquiry, I don't know, but I started getting phone calls. And it was like, hey, you haven't paid this debt. This is one of your college loans, blah, blah, blah. And this lady was relentless. And
Yeah.
I was like, ma'am, I was like, I haven't gotten a bill from you guys. And she was just like beating me up verbally. And I'm like, I swear to God, lady, I was like, I have not gotten, a bill. I was like, I pay all my bills. So long story short, they had the wrong address on file, and they were sent, and it wasn't being forwarded to my new address. And at the time, I mean, it was mutual, like it was an old address that I had a while back, not even when I graduated. But then I moved twice after college. And I told this lady, I was like, look, if you would have sent me a bill, I would have paid it. I was like, what do I got to do if this one? And she's like, you need to pay everything up, to date. And I'm like, I can do that. So I did that. It did fix my credit. I was good to go after that. But she was just badgering me, like beating me up, like, and she wouldn't even believe me. Like,
No.
so that was my only experience, knock on wood, with a debt collector. And that was 20 something years ago. But yeah, I didn't know that they got that vicious.
They get vicious, and that's actually not even the worst part of it, like I was saying. And you're lucky in that you're able to clear it up and, rectify your credit score. But the long-term repercussions of having, challenges with and it's not even like, you don't even have to go all the way to the point of you have your bills going to collections. A couple missed payments is all that it takes to really mess up a credit score. And then you're paying extra fees, higher interest charges, all of these other costs that get added on to your cost of living as a young person. And what, like I said, we're trying to set up our kids to be successful. And as a young person, if you're now paying more, like I was listening to a podcast of yours a while back with another guest, he was talking about how much you could actually set yourself up for success just by saving a little bit from a young age. Now, if you take away those options by adding in extra fees, extra interest charges, and all of these long-term effects, you you're just putting yourself back, right? There's no way to get ahead. And the goal is to maximize our young people's time in the markets, maximize their time saving. So we really need to make sure that they learn not just, and we're just focusing on the debt piece. There's other parts of financial literacy that we need to talk about as well. But we need to make sure our young people understand all of these different components of financial literacy before they get out into the world and before they need it, because that at that point it can be kind of late. I joke often, like, I had never owed anyone anything until I became an adult and got my first student loan. And that's crazy. I was given, $100,000 in loans without ever paying a bill in my life. I never owed anyone anything. And then all of a sudden this institution's like, here's $100,000. That's insane. We don't work that way typically, but we'll do that. We'll saddle our kids with hundreds or tens of thousands of dollars of debt, and they may not know what to do with it, and they may not know, hey, maybe I should be saving a little bit, maybe I need to, they get that first job and they don't know what it means to match their 401k. They don't know why they need to get a little bit of insurance here or there to make sure that they're protecting their wealth. And these are the things that I really want our parents and our dads to talk to our kids about, so that, like I said, when they're young, when they'll still listen to us, hopefully, they'll actually take on some of this information. And I like what you've said in some of your past shows as well, like showing them, bringing them along with you when you go to your financial advisors, including them in your discussions and your conversations when you're talking about your plans for retirement, even if it's vacation savings, whatever it might be. But by including our kids into these discussions, we'll start to show them what the real world looks like and what they need to be expecting and being prepared for.
Yeah, I think these kids are like thrusted out into this world of like they don't have to pay bills, and then suddenly they're handed over like this massive bill for 100 grand. It's really fascinating. And this is actually fresh off the experience. So I pay my two older boys, not the younger ones. The younger ones get a much, much lower quote unquote allowance. And I learned this from another podcast guest. So I've been giving my two oldest boys $100 a month for probably the past 3+ years, maybe. And some people, I remember when I would tell people that, they're like, you pay your kids $100 a month. And I'm like, hang on. I was like, when we go out to eat, they have to pay for their food. When they pay for their own haircuts. If they want a new pair of shoes, now granted, we will pay for the majority of things, right? Like their groceries. And hey, if we go to the gym and I get an energy drink, I'll get you one too, that type of thing, right? But sometimes when the kids are like when I'm in the car with them and pick them up after school, or we do something like, hey, can we go get something to eat? And I'll be like, we can. I'm not really hungry right now, but I'll take you to get something to eat and you have to pay for it. Or like, if they want, like, I'll buy them things that are reasonable. Like I'll just say this for what it is. We shop at Marshall's, we shop at TJ Maxx, we shop at Ross. Like my kids don't wear like super high-end designer clothes unless they pay for them. So if my son is like, hey, dad, like I really want these Under Armour pants, I'm like, great, you can, but you're paying for that.
Exactly.
And then we'll sit down and we'll talk about like, here's what you have coming up, this month. Like right now, you and I are recording in May. Hey man, we got Mother's Day coming up this month. You'll want to set some money aside for a card and a small gift for mom. Like that's important. Also this, and this. And I think it's really important to have those conversations. And even my oldest, who's 17, I think that this is awesome. It was never agreed or never said out loud that he would be paying for his own gas, but he's been paying for his own gas. Like zero questions of even like, hey, can you pay for my gas? Can I have a gas credit card? Or, hey, dad, I need money for gas. He has just been paying for it. And it's come out of that $100, out of his monthly budget. So he's like, it's funny, like we've all this time and years of like getting them to think proactively about money. And he's like, I'm like, hey, how are you with such and such on this and this? He's like, good. He's like, but I have to set $60 aside now a month just for gas. So that only leaves me with 40. So this summer, I'm either going to find a job or I need to, or I need to do extra work around the house, like that's actually, he does chores, but he's like extra, like, maybe I could help you in the office. If you need extra help in the office, I can do admin things for you and that kind of thing. So he's already thinking about setting money aside, and he's asking himself the question, how do I make more because now I have more expenses, which I think is cool.
I love what you've done there. And that's one of the things I try to encourage parents to do so much. And you're doing it like you said, you're paying your kids $100, but when you really think about it, you've just taken the money you were
Exactly.
going to spend on them anyways, and you're
Right.
giving it to them to manage their budget, to manage their wants and their needs, and to manage all of the things that they will have to do. Like you said, your son's 17. I don't know how many more years he's planning to be home with you, but it's probably not that many. So, but he's now got himself situated so he understands this is how I budget. This is how I manage money. I got a set amount coming in. I've got all these expenses coming out, and I need to be able to manage that. I wish I would have had opportunities like that. That's what I'm encouraging more parents to do. The allowance is great for the young kids, but once they get to teenage years, they really need to be managing a budget because that's what they're going to be doing shortly anyways. And if you can give them an opportunity to do that while they're home with you, and I love, love, love how you just said, like, it's not like, here's $100, go see how it works. Let's see if it works out okay for you. You sit down with them, you have conversations, you discuss it, you figure out what's working, what's not working. Tell me how you feel about like the conversation has to go along with the money and the opportunities to practice, because the money alone, it's not enough.
It's
We
not.
and there also, you've got a wealth of information, you've got a lifetime of information that you can share with your kids to say, hey, this is what happens when you don't do this or you don't do that, or when you do this or when you do that. So we've heard, I'm hoping most dads have heard, the value of having like a mentor mentee relationship. Like, you get to benefit from the life experience of someone else. Now what you're doing right now, like, again, you're a parent, but you're giving a mentor mentee relationship with regards to money. In the scenario, you're saying, hey, this is what happens when I didn't pay this bill. I got debt collectors calling me. It messed up my credit. That would mean I have to pay more for a car loan or for what have you. So it's showing via your life experience what can happen when you don't do or you do something. So I love how you've already started to incorporate that practical practice into your
Yeah.
young kids' lives. That's great.
Well, thank you. Because I think I really, really want to hear about the tactics that you teach. And most importantly, too, like not just teaching lessons, but how this will elevate the connection with our kids. I think that's fascinating, man. It's like a double whammy right there. But I think if you exactly what you just said is that if you just simply give the money without the conversation, or give the money without like teaching the life lesson or money mentality around it, you could actually make a problem potentially worse, because it's like,
Mhm.
oh, hey, everything's just given to you. And when you run out of money, just come and talk to me. I'll give you more. Like, that's not how the world works, right?
No,
And even my little guys, we give them like a $3 to $5 allowance, every
same,
week. Every
same.
Yeah, every week, and it's always tied to like they have to do work, like one of their set chores every day is they have to empty the dishwasher, right? And then they get their money. But the other really cool thing that I love with my kids is that they're really into Pokemon and stuff like that, and they're like, he's like, I really want to buy these cards. I was like, well, they're $10. And then they're like, okay, well, can I do more work? Can I do more work to make more money? So I love the fact that they're actually asking for it's like A plus B equals C,
Hmm.
versus like, well, can you buy these for me?
Hmm.
I think that that's a cool thing as well. But I want to get to um, simplifying. Gosh, how do I even start this? Let me ask you this. The story I'm telling myself, Clifton, is that there's probably a lot of parents out there that might be like, I don't even know if I'm financially literate. So how am I supposed to teach this to my kids? So maybe do we start there, you think?
Sure. And I've had that question a lot. So you're right. That's probably a question being asked. And what I like to say, I say a few things when I hear that question. One, you know more than your kids. There's no way that you've made it to this point in your life and you haven't learned something. And definitely, whatever you've learned a lot more than what your kids know. And I said it a few times in this conversation already. Our goal is to set our children up for success. Like, we're raising adults, we're not raising kids. So we need to teach our kids what we know, so that they can be prepared for what's about to come to face them. We know that it's a different world than when we grew up in. There's more digital experiences with money than we ever had when we were growing up. There's a lot of different things that our kids will experience than us, but the fundamentals of managing money, whether that be making sure that you've got an emergency fund, you're not trying to use debt to manage emergencies, you're investing regularly, you're saving regularly, you're trying to get your money to work for you, you're properly secured with regards to insurance, what have you. All of those life lessons that we've learned, whether the hard way or not, we've learned them. And it's now it's our responsibility to make sure that we're telling and teaching our kids this. One of the things I like to use as an example when I'm talking about this is, if your kids were to learn about what wealth is via Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, what would they think wealth is? They would think, well, I'll ask you, what do you think they would think wealth is if they were using, those three platforms to figure out what it means?
Oh, dude, like they would think wealth is the Ferrari or the Lambo that the people are getting into checking their phones. When in actuality, I mean, sure, they're influencers and people like that making money, sure, but some of them are like renting the Lambo for the day, or it's their buddy's Lambo and mansion that they're taking these photos at. And it's like, I always tell the kids, I'm like, listen, just because you have a Lamborghini or you have a really, even like some of the kids like, well, so and so's got a Mustang. I'm like, well, they might, but do they have any money
In the bank?
left over? Yeah. Have
Exactly.
they saved anything when they go out with friends? Are they scraping by because they got to make that Mustang payment and they can't like hang out with you guys at IHOP, or they're just getting a glass of water at IHOP with you guys while the rest of you guys are eating breakfast because they got to make that Mustang payment?
Exactly.
But yeah, I would love to actually hear more from your perspective. Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just assuming, but what do you think it is?
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that our kids, if they don't hear from us that wealth is the money that we don't spend, wealth is the money that we save in our accounts, wealth is, our investment funds, our retirement funds. It's the opportunity to, live off of dividends or live off of equity. If they don't hear that from us, if they don't actually experience what wealth is, then they will think it's the Lambo, it's the Ferrari, it's the Mustang. So it's up to us to tell them that. So to your original question, if you don't think you know enough about financial literacy yourself, you do. You know that wealth isn't a Lamborghini that's paid with a credit card. Wealth is the money that you have in your account so that, when you get a flat tire, you can replace it and not feel like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to hit my rent or mortgage payment this month.
Yeah.
That's what wealth is. Wealth is the options and the flexibility that you have to one day not work. That's what wealth is. But if we're not talking to our kids, because the thing is, our kids don't see that. If we're just, let's say, I don't know what your financial position is, and that's intentional. That's because I can't see what your wealth is. I don't know if you've got money saved up for retirement, but neither can your kids, right? So if your kids don't know, then they won't understand it. But if you open the door, if you take, pull back the curtains and say, look, this is what I've been saving for the past 10, 15 years. This is what me and mom are working towards so that we could retire one day and go chill. This is why we don't spend our money on every single want that comes into our head, because we know we need to put some money aside for emergencies and for our long-term goals. And that's a conversation that anyone can have with their kids, even if they're not in a position where they're doing everything right. Because that's the other thing. And I always want to let people know, like, no one's doing everything right. Even the richest of the rich aren't doing everything right. It's really just trying to set up those habits, those skills, so that you're doing it more times right than you're doing it wrong. But like I said, pulling back the curtain and showing our kids, this is what we're trying to do to save for your education or save for our retirement, so that we are in a better position tomorrow than we are in today. If we show our kids that, then they'll be like, oh, I get it. It's not that Lamborghini. It's not that fancy watch. It's not the cool clothes. They may still want it. I'm not pretending that our kids won't still want it, but at least they'll be able to understand that that's money spent. That's not wealth. And when you have wealth and you have enough wealth, you can have more, you can fulfill more of your needs and more of your wants. But you can't do that if you're spending every dollar that comes into your bank account, because you won't have enough at the end of the day, especially for those long-term goals. So this is why I like to say, we know this. We may or may not be acting on it, and we should. And that's one of the things you mentioned a moment before about the benefits of having these conversations with our kids. It's really, really hard to talk about these things with our kids and then not want to get our own house in order, right? Because
Right.
your kids know when you're not living your values. Your kids will see it. They see right through you, and you will feel it. You will be like, this isn't the life I want to live, and this is not the, I don't want to do what I say, don't do what I do. We know if that's what we're doing for our kids, we're doing them a disservice. So that's another benefit of having these conversations and being transparent with our kids, is that it will kind of force us to start doing what we know we need to do, whether that be budgeting, saving, investing. It will make us want to do more of it because we want to show our kids, yes, this is what you should do, and look, this is also what I'm doing. So it's another benefit, another value of having these conversations, is it really helps to focus in what you should do. And another thing, back to that original question of yours about what if I don't think I know enough? This is your golden ticket. This is your opportunity to say, okay, I don't know enough about, investing. I want to teach my kids because I know I've heard over and over again, compounding growth will make me a millionaire if I only save so much money over so much time. But I don't quite understand it. I do not get it. This is your chance to find the book, find the podcaster, find the wealth investor, find the financial coach to teach you, so that you can then teach your kids. Because we all know the best way to learn something is to teach someone else. So if you really, really want to give your kids the best opportunities, take this moment and say, listen, I need to learn more here so that I can make sure that when my kid gets to my age, they've mastered this skill. This isn't something that they're going to be learning when they're 30, 40, 50. This is something they're going to get when they're in their teens. So when they're in their 20s, they're going to be crushing it.
I think that's really, really important, is, you know, setting our kids up for some know-how in those 20s, right? Because I think that's exactly where that's where I made mistakes, right? I missed a bill,
Same.
and that's where a lot of us make mistakes. In fact, I almost view the college experience from a financial aspect. I'm not saying like getting a college degree is bad. Like some people will question the value of college. I still think that there's a tremendous amount of value in college from um, the experience aspect of it. It gives you, I think, a good training ground to be on your own. I also think you learn a lot of different social and emotional skills by being on your own and being around other people who are in the same boat as you, like on their own, away from home. So I think it forces you to grow up a little bit. And plus, is a 4-year degree or a master's degree, is it needed or relevant? Some people will say absolutely not. You can still be successful. People will be like, no, it's still there. Not here to argue that, but I will say this: whether you do anything with a degree that you get or not, I think college does a pretty decent job of teaching you how to think, right? And think independently, and to give you that training ground and being on your own. However, I also think it's like this tremendous bear trap of financial death sometimes, or a financial reboot, and not in a good way. You're taking on the most amount of debt that you're going to sometimes take on in your adult life, minus buying a house. And also at the same time, you are at the lowest income state of your entire life, of your entire adult life. And you have now access to credit cards. And if you don't have the financial literacy or the know-how or the budgeting, it is a recipe. It's like a trifecta of could be financial burdens
Disaster, for
for
sure.
years, right? But I'd really love to talk about okay, so we've addressed how, whether or not we view ourselves as financially literate is one thing, but how do what are one, two, or three things that we can simply go to our kids and start teaching them? And what I'd love for you to sprinkle into that is, and this is how also it elevates your relationship with them.
Sure. So I'm going to give you the thing I love the most. And this is, you're a podcaster. So this is what you do every day. Tell your children stories about what you've done, what you haven't done, what you wish you did. Just talk to them about money in an open, transparent way. Unfortunately, money is still kind of a taboo subject in our society. It's often hard for, people who don't know each other, people who know each other well, to get into a conversation about money. But within your home, within your family, between you and your kids, it should never be a taboo subject. They should be willing to come to you, and you should be willing to go to them and talk to them in an age appropriate way without burdening them with any, stress or anxiety that might be coming from your financial situation. But you want to be able to talk to them openly and transparently. One of the things we often hear, we say it all the time, we want our kids to be able to come to us when they have problems, when they have challenges, whether that be with relationships or with schooling or with substances or what have you, right? Like, we want our kids to be comfortable coming to us and talking to us about whatever they have going on in their lives, because we want to help them. We want to be their support. But if our kids don't feel like they can talk to us about something as fundamental as money, as fundamental as the thing that we all use almost every day and need to talk about so much, but we don't talk to our kids about it, if they don't feel like they could talk to us about that, we're putting up a barrier that we might not even realize we've put up, right? They'll know that there are some things dad doesn't want to talk to me about. Like, I remember there's times when I've heard other families talk about, I tried to talk to my parents about money, and they're like, well, we don't talk about that in this family. Well, if there's some things that you don't talk about, well, how willing are your kids going to be to come to you to talk to you about the other hard things, the sex things, the politics things, the relationship things? Like, there are hard conversations that every parent is going to need to have with their child. And if they can't talk to you about money, about something so fundamental, you're putting up a barrier, right? If we really want our kids to have a good relationship with us, a strong, healthy relationship with us, they need to know that they could talk to us about anything and everything. So that's why I really want you to feel, I want you to make it a situation where it's a safe, open space to talk to your kids about money. Now, more tangibly, more practically, like, what can you do for those young ages when your kids are just curious about life and what's happening? They will ask you questions. They'll see you take your card and tap it on a machine, and all of a sudden you're walking out of the store with a bunch of groceries. They'll ask, or they'll at least give you a look like, what's happening there? Talk to them. Say, this is when I tap this card here, money from my bank account goes into their bank account. Just open up some conversations, and just like, the last thing I'm saying is, gather your kids around the fireplace and start, get a whiteboard and start diagramming things. I'm not saying do that. That's a good way to get your kids to tune out real quick. So that's not what I'm suggesting. Maybe if you really are having a hard time getting them to understand compound interest, you might need to do a little diagram. But for the most part, I'm saying just have open conversations with your kids. I'll give you an example. 1 week ago, or a few weeks ago, my wife brought home some strawberries, super expensive, inflation. We all know the story. And we were talking, she made a comment. She's like, these were super expensive. And the conversation that came from that was great. Well, we started talking about, well, me, my kids, my wife, do we need strawberries? Can we replace strawberries with something else? So we have like a needs versus want conversations. Well, why are the strawberries so expensive? We had a conversation about inflation and what causes inflation, a supply versus demand conversation. So we had all these conversations just because my wife mentioned how expensive the strawberries were. We started talking about prioritizing. Well, do we need to put so much money towards our grocery budget? Well, if we take some money away from our grocery budget to buy, or we add money to our grocery budget to buy the strawberries, does that mean we're taking money away from our budget to go on vacation? So we're talking about budgeting, needs versus wants, supply versus demand, inflation. All of these conversations sprung up from a simple, throwaway comment about the price of strawberries. And these conversations could happen in so many families if we just take the time to be open, be honest, be transparent, and engage our kids with their natural curiosity. And that's just an example of one thing that you could do. Just be very open, be willing to engage them in again, age appropriate way, and talk to them. Just talk to them and let them drive some of that conversation, answer their questions, and let them know how money works in your family, in society, in the economy.
I love the analyzing the needs versus the wants. I think that's such a powerful filter, not just for a kid, but for adults as well. It's like, man, do we really want this, or do we need this? Right. Or do we, my wife and I, we are making a decision right now. We're thinking about putting an infrared sauna in our house in the basement. And we looked at the price and we're like, okay, is this a need or a want? Does it align with our core values? And 2 out of 7 of our core values is health and vitality. So it's part of our core values. It's not something like, oh, we're just going to buy it to buy it. We're really also assessing how often will we actually use it. And then do we want to buy it now or not at all? Because this money could be put towards this experience or this trip or this whatever else is coming up running it through those filters, and we actually speak about these things out loud in front of the
That's
kids.
right. That's
So
it. It's giving them a chance to see how you're using your values as a filter. Like it's not with so much talk about money, it kind of comes down to the consumption. That's usually where the conversation goes when we start talking about money. Well, how do I get more money so I can get more things or more experiences? And that's just consumption, but that's only part of the picture. One of the things I talk about in my book, and in general when I'm having conversation with parents, is that a big part of financial literacy has to be also the other parts of giving and donating, and how will spending make you feel. Like there's a lot more to financial literacy than just consuming and getting more and getting more. So I love how you're using the needs versus wants along with your values, your family's values. Because again, our kids are picking up on all of this, and they need to see that you're using a filter that isn't just based off of, well, Jones down the street got a spa or a sauna, so I should get one. Like there's that. And some people could use that filter. I don't think it's a great one, but you're using your values to determine where you allocate your money and how you prioritize your spending. And too many people, they do that, but they don't necessarily then do that in front of their kids. Their kids can see how they've used their values to actually make their spending decisions. And I think that's wonderful.
yeah, I think it's important because yeah, you don't want to buy things for the wrong reason. Like I hate that whole thing of keeping up with the Jones. I've shared this story like 100 times on the podcast. So I'm not gonna like beat a dead horse. So I'll just give you the high level. We did a backyard project in our backyard, like a patio and a fire pit and all this stuff. And um, it was quite pricey, but we also, don't buy crazy designer clothes or cars, right? I had a conversation with my oldest son, and we had two people in my neighborhood buy Corvettes that were my age. And my son was like, "Hey, Dad, like, so and so's dad just got a Corvette, and so and so's dad just got a Corvette. Like, when are you going to get a Corvette?" And we were sitting outside and we were enjoying the patio because it had just gotten done, and all of his friends were over. We were playing music, we had pizza. And I put my arm around him. I go, "You're sitting in my Corvette, man."
Exactly.
And he's
Exactly.
like, "What are you talking about?" And I told him, I was like, what we pay in the backyard is probably half the price of a brand new Corvette. But I was like, I could have taken the money we spent on this backyard and bought a Corvette, but we would have thought it was cool. And if we take a ride and it's just me and you and none of your friends, and I started like looking around as friends, I was like, so could have bought a Corvette, go for a ride, just two of us, or could have this. Which one? And he like looked around, he goes, that was a good decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
which
That's
which
great.
you just got to say those things, I think, out loud. But what I'd really love to get to next is I'd love to get to this concept, and I've heard this from one other podcast guest, and it was Jim Shields, who wrote the book, The Family Board Meeting.
Mm.
And that is, you're doing a collaborative sort of project with your 11-year-old son around the richest man in Babylon. But I would unselfishly, I can't wait for you to share this with the audience. Selfishly, I can't wait for you to share it because I might steal it and move forward with it. But yeah, tell us about that, please.
Sure, sure. So before I start, are you familiar with the richest man in Babylon? I'll break it down for your audience, but just curious, do you know the richest man in Babylon?
So this sounds terrible. I know the book,
Okay.
and I have so many other friends and business partners that rave about the book. I don't know that much about the book.
It's perfect. I'll
Yeah.
I'll give you a quick primer on it. So The Richest Man in Babylon, it was written almost 100 years ago by a guy named George Clayson. And it first came out as like a bunch of little pamphlets, like short little stories about basically financial literacy, like skills, like saving, paying yourself, or saving and insurance and all these other different skills. But he wrote it in these like short little stories. He said it in ancient Babylon. I don't know why he picked ancient Babylon, but that's actually I kind of know why, because I think he was a classics student. So he studied the classics when he was in school. So he set all these stories in Babylon, but there were all these short, really easy to understand stories that he then eventually compiled into a book. And anyone in the personal finance space is usually at some point someone's either recommended it or they found it on their own. And the book's called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful. It's a great introduction to financial literacy concepts for anyone at any age. And it's just great. The challenge was, well, I'll get to the challenge in a moment. So, being one of my favorite books, and it definitely is one of my favorite books, I decided, I'd run out of stuff to read to my son. I decided I was going to read it to him. It's not meant for kids, but it's very PG, so I wasn't worried about reading it to him. So I started reading it to him, and within the first page or two, his eyes just glazed over. He had no idea what I was saying. Um, and it's funny because the story is written, it was written in 1926, and the author, he tried to kind of give it some like old-timey ancient Babylon flavor to it. So it's written in a way that can be hard for someone to read. I talked to a friend of mine who's also an author, and he's like, any book written that long ago is technically in the public domain now. So you could do whatever you want with it. And I was like, really? So I checked that with my lawyer, and he's like, yep, no, public domain works, or basically anything in the public domain, you could do whatever you want with. For example, Mickey Mouse is about to jump in the public domain next year. So beware, you might see some Mickey Mouse spin-offs. They just did something with, like, I think Winnie the Pooh, because Winnie the Pooh just jumped in the public domain a little while ago too. So there's all kinds of stuff that you could do with public domain works. But what I wanted to do with it is I want this to be something that my son will actually understand, because the book is great. It's just written in a way that's hard for him to understand. So I said, well, let me rewrite it. And then I asked him, I was like, do you want to work on this with me? And he's like, sure. So what I would do is I'd read a couple lines to him, and if he understood what it meant, I would keep it in. And if he didn't understand what it meant, I'd rewrite it until he understood it. So that way we work through. It's not a very long book, it's like less than 200 pages, I think. So it's not a long book. And each book, the book itself is made up of short stories. So it was really easy for him to go through, because you're just reading a bunch of short stories. So that way we went through the whole thing and revised the book to make it, more contemporary, better for a modern audience. And, they often say you should write to like about a grade 5 level. And I was like, well, I wrote it with a grade 5. So he definitely understood, like someone in grade 5 could understand it easily. So he and I worked on it. We released it last November. So it's been out for a little while now. There's a copy of it behind me. And it's been great. I've been getting great feedback on it. People seem to be able to, it's a lot easier to understand. I wrote it so that it'd be a lot more inclusive. Like I said, it was written in 1926. So every character that was of any type of import was a male character. So I tried to diversify the cast a little bit. Like I said, I cleaned up the language to make it a lot easier to understand. The stories are all generally the same, except for one that I just didn't think hit the mark. So I totally rewrote that whole chapter. So the book is refreshed and revised. The subtitles like revised for modern times, but it's a book that he and I worked together. It was a lot of fun, and it's been great. It's been doing really well.
That is so cool. So you basically went through this like line by line to make sure that, no kidding.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Um, what did it do? So obviously for you guys, you worked on this together, but let's just take, the basic guy the basic father who picks up your book, starts to read this book with their kids. What do you think that they can expect from, I would say, a relationship equity
Mm.
type of a stance where they would, come together and deepen their relationship, and they'd be able to talk about topics, and what types of things come to mind for you?
It's a great question. So one, like I said, like when we started chatting a while ago, it will open up the opportunity to talk about money between you and your child. So if you feel like it's hard to, broker those conversations or start those conversations, reading a book like this, where you're reading a story about someone who basically wants to become wealthy, finds a mentor who teaches them how to become wealthy. Again, it highlights the parent-child relationship, in that basically the whole story, which is one of the reasons why I love it so much. It talks so much about, like, I want this thing, but I don't know how to get it. So then I find someone who knows how to do it, and they teach me the ways. And throughout it, I make mistakes, I fall down, I get back up. I make mistakes, I fall down, I get back up, but then I get it, and then I keep doing it, and then it all works out. So it's a classic, hero's journey, in that you have to make mistakes, but you also need to find that guide. So I think for a family, or a father and a child reading it, it could give you that, I'm here to be that guide for you. And then just in general, the habits that it talks about, the skills that it talks about. I think the most popular line from the book is pay yourself first, which is the concept of making sure that when you earn, whatever it is you earn, you take some of that for yourself before you pay for the internet, before you pay for groceries, before you pay for anything. You take some of that money and you keep it for yourself. And that's how you start to save. That's how you start to build wealth. And then it talks about, well, what do you do with that money? Well, you take that money and you make sure that money's working for you. You invest that money and you find ways to make that money grow. And in doing so and doing that over a long period of time, you build wealth. So it will give a young person, and like I said, it works for any age, but it definitely, in the context of your question, it will give a young person the foundation of, oh, okay, I get it. If I really want to be wealthy, it's not about going out and buying all this stuff to make me feel good in the moment. It's about planting the seeds early and consistently so that I have a harvest that I could reap later. That's the idea. And that's the core of the story, along with this idea of like a mentor mentee relationship. We put those two together, and I think it's a powerful, powerful story that works really well with any family.
Yeah, and just think about this for a moment, right? Think about what this will do, because your kids will remember this type of experience and learning from you when they're in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Like my dad sat down and read this book with me, right? And I remember being 9 years old, 10 years old, and we were talking about this. Like I think that that's really, really beneficial. One other thing too that something just came up in the relationship with or in conversation with my oldest, and I just want to get your feedback on it. So, you never really want to label your kids, but you see some of their habits. So my 15-year-old, he's like the spender,
Mm.
and so they're obviously helping and coaching with that a little bit because he ran to a situation where he ran out of money and he had like a negative cafeteria balance. And I'm like, what are you gonna do about it? And, it's like I love that he kind of falls on his face here. And he's like, I don't know. Like, what do I like? I don't get my $100 for like another 20 days. I need to make this balance right. I'm like, yeah, you do. So what are you gonna do? And you saw him start to think and everything. And he's like, well, he's like, I have some birthday money, but I don't want to use that. And then he like looks at me. He's like, do you need any extra help in the office? Or anyway, what happened was I didn't expect this. He went and got a job.
Good for him.
He's making Jimmy John sandwiches now. He's like
Good for him.
but it all sparked from him financially kind of face planning a little bit. And he's like, Dad, I think I want to get a job. He's like, but me being under 16, I need your permission. We need to fill out some paperwork. And I was like, I'm on board with it as long as it's this many hours a week and it doesn't interfere with your grades and your track and all this other stuff that you're doing. So we did that. And I just love it. I love it. And he's had his own checking account for a while. So he's getting his own direct deposit. So we'll have different conversations now. But one other thing too, that I want to get your take on is it, it's been an interesting conversation. So my 17-year-old is more the saver. And let me rephrase that. He's the non-spender.
Mm.
So
Okay.
my son is like, he's like, I want to he took his little brother out to dinner into an arcade the other night. And he was like, he's like, I really don't like spending, this type of money. He's like, because, it's like, I like saving my money. I was like, let's be clear on something here. And he's got his own investment account as well. And he hasn't put into it for a while. I was like, we need to be careful about your words here, Ethan. I was like, there's a difference between saving and not spending.
Yes.
You're not spending, but you're not saving either. Actually, the
Mm-hmm.
money that's in your checking account right now, technically it's costing you because you're not actually taking that money and putting it into your investment account.
Investment account. Mm-hmm.
But I would love for you to share just some insight on how we can explain that one to our kids. Like, hey, just because you're not spending money, that doesn't mean you're not saving.
It's so great. It's on both sides of that. Our, it's so easy for us to get into these habits of I can't spend because I need to save and I need to get ahead. I've seen that a lot. There's some communities out there, it's all about trying to retire as early as possible,
Right.
so you deprive yourself of every desire now with the idea of I'll be able to then reap the rewards of this at an early age, and sometimes that works out. The thing that we have to keep in mind is that habits are powerful, right? If we get into the habit of depriving ourselves of something, it might not be that easy to then turn it off and say, no, I'm going to live better now, or I'm going to do this now. So I like to talk in terms of habits. Like, what is the habit? Like, what are you trying to set yourself up for? So if you don't feel like you can spend your money, then you're going to be, depriving yourself of things that, not just things that you want, which is not a bad thing. We need to have a balance, but it's really about that balance. You need to be able to also provide for your needs. There's a need for connection and community and feeling like you have a purpose. And if you're spending for those needs, because those are also needs, like we can't just think needs are food, shelter, and that's not it. Like if you look at the hierarchy of needs, connection is a need. We need to take care of that. And if it means I get to go out, and I say it very intentionally, I get to go out and have a meal with someone I care about and build and invest in that relationship, that's money well spent. That's something you want to do when you can do it. Because at the end of the day, when we're all, when we're being taken care of by our kids, it's our kids' relationships with each other, it's our kids' relationships with their significant others, it's our kids' relationships with their friends that is what will carry them through. So we need to keep in mind that it's a balance between not just spending and saving and not spending. It's about making sure you're investing, and you use the word investing there. So yes, there's a monetary investment to make sure that you're taking that money and you're putting it towards, growing. But there's also the other part, because you mentioned like he took his little brother out. That's phenomenal. He's investing in a relationship. His little brother's not going to forget that. That's something that he'll remember, and that's something that helps that relationship grow and build and get stronger. So it's really reminding our kids that there's a spectrum of needs that it doesn't just stop with, food and shelter. There's the connectivity, there's the relationships, and that's so, so important. And sometimes it means you want to spend a little money on that, and that's okay. You don't have to, you can go for a walk, you can hang out at the park. There's things you can do to build a relationship that don't cost a cent. But let's be honest, going out for a night at the arcade, that sounds like a lot of fun. And it's not a huge, it's not, if you got $100 budget, it might be a big part of your overall budget, but it's so, so worth it when you realize what you've actually invested in.
Totally agree with that, man. I love that. Because I think we can go the wrong way with money. Right? We always say that in our family, money is a tool. We're not a slave to it. We give it to things that we believe in. We spend in things that are aligned with our core values and what we value as a family. And I'll share this one quick story. We're really conservative with our money. Like we pay ourselves every month, a certain amount, and we spend on things that we value, right? I was in Vegas for data edge stuff for a bunch of different interviews. And when I go out of town, I like to usually take one of my kids with me just for the experience of it. And we were in Vegas, and there's not many things to do in Vegas if you're a family. I mean, you can see like the David Copperfield and, stuff like that, Blue Man Group and, concerts that are appropriate and that kind of thing. Well, my son and I, we got offered from one of our guys in our community to go to Keith Urban concert. And in order to do so, we had to stay an extra day. So I was talking to a few of the locals in Vegas, and I'm like, hey, what's there to do here that's like family friendly? And a few of the things we had already done. And they're like, well, do you like firearms? And I'm like, well, yeah, we have firearms, and yeah, we like firearms. And they're like, you ever been in a helicopter? I'm like, nope, never been in a helicopter. And they're like, what about firing a gun out while a helicopter's in the air? And I'm like, what? Sure enough, there's this place, and it's an hour from Vegas. It's in the middle of the desert. It's called Gunship. Uh, it's called what's it called? It's just called helicopter gunships. I believe it's the only civilian experience that civilians can have firing a machine gun outside of a helicopter.
Okay.
So I called and I asked, I was like, how much is this? And I'll just be very, very upfront. I was sticker shocked, and I had to really run this through my filters, but all in for basically it was like the majority of the day, they take you up in this helicopter, you shoot guns. And also it was $1,600 for both of us. And I was like, oh my God, $1,600, like $1,600.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of money. So I talked about this with my son who was with me, and he's like, I asked him, I go, what do you think? He's like, Dad, that's really expensive. I was like, it is. And it makes me uncomfortable. But at the same time, you're 17. I don't know if you and I will ever go on a one-on trip to Vegas ever again, maybe in our whole lives. I don't know. This might be the last one, right? And I was like, and we have a free day to do something. It's their last appointment that we could book. I can tell you this. We may or may not remember that it was $1,600, but when we're in our 50s and 60s and 70s, we're always going to remember the day that we shot machine guns out of a helicopter. I was like, what do you think? And he's like, memories over stuff. That's one.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I was like, all right, let's just, it was painful. I called late back. I was like, here's my credit card number. We're on our way. But I will tell you, it made me so uncomfortable. But at the same time, we got these photos and this experience. And I'm like, you know what? Hell yeah. $1,600. It was uncomfortable, but all day long, I loved it. And it's created so much of a memory. It was so cool. But I think I think if we have those conversations, and I would love for you to just expand on this a little bit more, of how can we use money as a tool to not have this maybe scarcity, but more like, hey, let's invest in a memory or an adventure or in our relationship equity, and let's use money as a tool to do so. What are your thoughts on that?
It's the same as before. You have to talk about it. Like what you did with your son, where you actually highlighted this is not a small amount of money.
Yeah.
But what we're getting out of this, because it gets back to, well, what is money for, right? Money is a
Yeah.
transfer of goods, it's a transfer of value. But think about value. Like, what's the value we're getting out of this thing that we're going to spend our money on? If it means, if the value is worth more than what you're about to spend on, that might be a good investment. That might be a good time to spend your money. It may not. You need to do. Again, I love how you speak about this. You said you ran it through your filters. You didn't just say, great, sounds fun, let's do it. You're like, no, these are the things that I, prioritize. These are the things that my family cares about. And you recognize that there's value in this experience that will outlive and outlast the financial cost or financial, not burden, but the financial cost of this experience. So it's thinking about, again, the connections that you're building, the value that you're adding. So one of the things I talk about in my book, Your Kids, Their Money, it's why do we want to donate? Why do we want to give some of our money away? And it's because it provides our kids with broader sense of where they fit in the world, right? Like there's so many massive challenges out there, and our kids are aware of all of these things, right? Like I think one of the things that we do a disservice to our kids on is when we don't recognize that they see and understand so much more than we think they do. So they recognize the inequity, they see it, they know it's out there. And when we show them that, well, one, we give them an opportunity to have access to money, like you've done with your allowance or the budget. And I encourage parents, if they could do something similar, to do so. But when we give them access to money and then we encourage them to give some of it away, well, why are we giving this thing away that we just want so much and that we need? And it, it has all these things, because there's value in giving it away, not just to the people who receive it, but to yourself, and
Yeah.
recognizing that you're now part of a solution to a problem that you may have thought is bigger than yourself, but no, you could be part of a solution. So there's value there. So we have to talk about money in terms of value and what are we getting. So it's not just the values that we use as our filters to determine how we want to use the money, but then there's the value that we get as exchange, that we get from exchanging this money. So when it comes to how do we make sure our kids know that it's not just about, again, consumption and how do we, when should we, it's talking about the values that we use to determine how we spend our money, how we prioritize it, and the value we get when we actually do spend it or don't. So it's thinking in terms of value.
I love that, man. I want to give you some time here to share where people can find your book. It sounds like a fascinating book that not only parents can read, but you can read with your kids, correct?
So I've got two. I've got my first book, which is called Your Kids, Their Money. It's a parent's guide to raising financially literate children. That book, I've had like it's a book for parents, but I've had lots of parents say they've gone through it with their kids. I've had some grandparents say they've gone through it with their grandkids. So that book is basically a book that I've tried to provide a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here, provide resources, tools, tips, language, so that you know how to talk to your kids about money, what you should be talking about. So you go beyond the, earn money, save money. It talks about, insurance and wealth and why wealth is important. It talks about giving and donating. So that's my first book. The second book that I put out is the republishing of A Richest Man in Babylon, revised for modern times. That's the one I worked on with my son. You can find both of those on my website, cliftoncorbin.com. They're on Amazon, they're on Kindle, they're in Barnes and Noble, they're in all the places you find books. If you're trying to to connect with me, you can go to my website, cliftoncorbin.com. I post a lot on LinkedIn, and it's linkedin.com/cdcorbin. And I've also got a fun, I think it's fun. It's a activity book for kids, ages, let's say 6 to 8, maybe a little bit younger. So let's say grade 1 to grade 3. It's a free activity book. You can download it anytime. It's at kidsmoneyworkbook.com. And you can just download it, print it off. It's got chances to identify money and coins and to do activities where you start to hear about budgeting and start seeing some of these so that your kids can start putting a lot of these things that I'm talking about. They can start seeing it and figuring out, okay, well, how do I make this money work? So it's an activity book that basically starts giving their kids a chance to see and experience money, even if they don't have any access to it. So again, that's at kidsmoneyworkbook.com.
Oh man, I literally, I'm on the site right now. So this comes in like an electric PDF.
Yeah, it's a PDF. You could print it out, and then your kids could just work through it. So there's some money math in there. They could it's word finds. There's puzzles at the back of the book. There's some printable money. So if you don't have, if you don't want to give your kids actual money, they could print out money. One of the things I love doing with the young kids is playing like role playing games where you're like, pretend kitchen or pretend restaurant or pretend grocery store. So if you want, you could print out the book, print out those back pages, cut out the money, and then you can do some play money with your kids. So again, give them opportunities to practice, to do these things, to experience money, and you can do it along with them. And this activity book, I think it's a great way for your kids just to start getting their hands, getting their feet wet with some of this stuff. So it's again, kidsmoneyworkbook.com, always free. So download it, enjoy it. It's there for you to use.
I just downloaded it.
Excellent.
This is awesome, man. Oh my gosh, this is so cool, Clifton.
Thank you.
I'm actually just scrolling through it. Like it helps you, like helps the kids like identify like what's a nickel, what's a quarter, some math in here, some fun puzzles, even like how to add up quarters and nickels and dimes, like if they're in different amounts of money, crossword puzzles. Like this is great, dude. I'm gonna totally print this out and
Excellent.
That's awesome. Very cool resource, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet. Gentlemen, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes for you guys. You'll be able to connect with Clifton. Obviously, just a fantastic individual, as well as a wealth of knowledge with his books. We'll have links for his books, links for this workbook as well. If you head on over to thedadedge.com/106 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/106. Clifton, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like I could actually talk to you for like another hour. This was
it's my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this, and I would love to talk for another hour.
You bet. You bet, man. All right, gentlemen, that's all we got time for today. However, we might have Clifton back to dive even deeper. Go out, live legendary. Take care.